Hey, it's Dan Zimmerman. Welcome to Illustrate to Educate. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly, objective videos on topics that matter. Have you ever wondered, how does the United States presidential transition work? In this video, we'll dive into the process of transitioning from one president to the next. Presidential transitions have existed in one form or another since 1797, when George Washington handed over the presidency to John Adams. While many have gone smoothly, others have not been so great. So how are they supposed to work? In the United States, a presidential transition is the process during which the President-elect of the United States prepares to take over the administration of the federal government of the United States from the incumbent or current president. Although planning for transition can start at any time before a presidential election and in the days following, the transition formally starts when the funds set aside by Congress are released by the General Services Administration, or the GSA, following the outcome of the presidential election, and continues until Inauguration Day on January 20th, when the President-elect takes the oath of office, at which point the powers, immunities, and responsibilities of the presidency are legally transferred to the new president. You might be wondering, is there any legislation that helps this process of transitioning? That has to do with something called the Presidential Transition Act of 1963. In that act, it establishes the current process to facilitate an orderly and peaceful transition of power. Under federal law, the presidential candidate receives classified national security briefings once their nomination is formalized by their party. They are also entitled to presidential transition services and facilities provided by the General Services Administration, including office space, equipment, and the payment of certain related expenses. Just after the presidential election, a revised edition of the Plum Book is published, which lists over 9,000 federal positions which an incoming administration needs to review, fill, or confirm. Can the process of transitioning happen before an election? The transition normally includes some pre-election planning, which involves consideration of key personnel from the outgoing and incoming president's staff, resources, as well as a host of activities such as carefully examining candidates for positions in the new administration, helping to familiarize the incoming administration with the operations of the executive branch, and developing a comprehensive policy platform. The Presidential Transition Act of 2019 requires the incumbent president to establish transition councils by June of an election year to facilitate a possible handover of power. Next, let's talk about the pre-election phase of the presidential transition. The transition process begins as leading presidential contenders form a transition team to start making preliminary plans for building an administration and assuming the presidency should they be elected. This can take place at any time of the candidate's choosing. In 2008, the Obama presidential campaign began planning for a possible presidential transition several months before Election Day. And in April 2012, before Mitt Romney became the Republican Party nominee, the Romney presidential campaign began planning for a potential transition. Key activities in this pre-election phase include setting goals, organizing a transition team, and establishing relationships with any important government entity like Congress, the FBI, and other administrations. Now, let's take a look at what happens on Election Day. The GSA administrator officially determines the apparent winner of a presidential election. If it is not the incumbent president, the winner can access federal agencies and transition funds. There are no firm rules on how the GSA determines the president-elect. Typically, the GSA chief might make the decision after reliable news organizations have declared the winner or following a concession by the loser. The GSA administrator's declaration releases about $10 million in transition funds for salary, support, computer systems, and office space. The actual transition phase begins immediately following the presidential election, unless there are any electoral disputes, and if the sitting president is not re-elected or is concluding a second term. In the case of the Obama-Trump transition, on the day after the election, November 9, 2016, outgoing President Barack Obama made a statement from the Rose Garden of the White House in which he announced that he had spoken the previous evening with apparent election winner Donald Trump and formally invited him to the White House for discussions to ensure that there is a successful transition between our presidencies. Obama said that he had instructed his staff to follow the example of the Bush administration in 2008, who he said could not have been more professional or more gracious in making sure we had a smooth transition. This phase of the process lasts between 72 and 78 days, ending on Inauguration Day. Key activities in this phase include staffing the office of the President-elect, deploying agency review teams, building out the President-elect's policy agendas, and identifying key talent necessary to execute the new president's priorities. Did you enjoy this video about the presidential transition? Please like and share the video, subscribe to Illustrate to Educate, and comment on your thoughts about the process of the presidential transition. And of course, don't forget to check out some of my other videos to the right.